Hi everyone, I'm Michelle and welcome back to my meadow. Today is July 3rd and it is already time for our monthly garden tour, and you all will not believe how many things have changed in this short time here in the garden. I'm starting a little later than normal with this live tour, so I've made sure I've got my sunscreen on, I've got my hat, because we're going to start out in the hottest part of the garden this morning, so then work our way back to where it's cool. And for those who love our bananas, Coach Kim, I am going to start at the bananas so we can check in and see how they are doing today. If it's your first time watching, I am in Zone 9A in Northeast Florida. We have a long, hot and humid growing season. Our total growing days between frost dates is about 300 days. So we can grow pretty much year round. It's July now, and you would think it's too hot to plant stuff, but it's not. There are some of these heat lovers that we're going to be getting in the ground in this next week. For those of you who know, I had shoulder surgery, and so I have been taking it easy. That might be an overstatement, but I've been asked to take it easier. So I haven't made as many videos this week for my YouTube channel. It hasn't been as busy here as I would like for it to be, but I also need to get this shoulder healed up, and I need to make sure that I am full form when it's time. My therapist likes to remind me that it is a year process, and I just shake my head and I'm like, but I am an overachiever. He goes, well, too bad. If you do have questions along the way, or you have comments about a place we are in the garden, if you will tell me what plant we're on or where we're at in the garden when you have your question, like, hey Michelle, in the bananas I saw XYZ, can you tell us a little more about that? So let's get growing around the garden, folks. My other favorite garden tool I don't ever talk about, these great sloggers. They are awesome waterproof shoes. All right, the crows are here. It's about their time. We'll move slowly here. I am really enjoying this new gimbal that I purchased. I've been using it about a month now, long enough to say that I could highly recommend it. It's taken a little getting used to, but it makes it really nice when we're doing these walking shots where I can get a nice steady video as I'm walking around the garden. Now, let's go check out those bananas. So, we're starting at the banana circle and we're going to work our way around the front because you can just see the difference. Actually, I'll turn it so you can see the difference in the shade back here this morning versus the hot sun up here. And that is simply because we have these great trees, the sun's coming up over the trees, and so the west side of our yard is hot all day long and the east side of our yard is not. Isn't that hilarious? So back to these bananas. First off, the babies are looking fantastic. We don't have very many hands on there, but I am still very excited to see this. The male flowers are continuing to open. In fact, I think we had some open this morning. And usually there are some bees out here when it's early. When this first opens, the bees are swarming on this, enjoying it. But the banana circle is looking amazing. I don't see any other hands of bananas coming on yet, but still. Let's back it out so you can see the whole thing. How about that? So this banana circle is officially 2 years old. I started with originally 3 years ago with 3 banana plants, which became 9, which now are probably close to 40 banana plants in there. I will need to do some more pruning after this year. I've learned some things about how to prune them better, and so definitely we'll need to do a better job with that. While we are here on this side, I want you to feast your eyes on the loveliness that is the south garden. I have another video for YouTube coming out about this because this garden was just being beaten by the sun. So right this minute, you don't really see the sun there, but in about an hour, this is going to have full sun, and it will have hot sun on it until 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And I did not have a good mulch cover on here, and everything was just dying. And my friend recommended adding in legumes and beans, which are all the big viney green things you see. And while the fertility is not where I want it to be, it certainly looks luscious and tropical and lovely here. Growing in the front of this bed, we have some okra. We have Taiwan eggplant, more okra, and there are beans, onions, and tomatoes. Check out this onion. This is kind of fun to me. This is a store-bought onion that I purchased so that I could put in little guardian plants, little detractor plants, little discouragers around my other plants. And it really has thrived. I actually pulled one of them out the other day and we ate it with dinner, and it was delicious. The lemongrass is also thriving as well. Now we're going to head up to the front and take a look at the pollinator garden, complete with pollinators. A lot of the plants in here have grown more than a foot since our last tour. The agapanthus has flowered and is now going to seed. I'm going to collect those. I'm not sure what I can do with them, if I can plant with them, but I will. The zinnias, coreopsis, gaillardia, milkweed. It is all just amazing. I don't know if y'all can see all the activity or not. Let me know in the comments if you guys can see how much pollinator activity is on here this morning. A lot of times when I do these garden tours, the sun hasn't hit them yet and you don't have nearly as many pollinators. But once the sun comes out, it really is wild. Let's see, right there. Hopefully I'm over the top of that pink zinnia where we have a skipjack and 2 other little micro pollinators in there. Those could be bees or they could be hoverflies. I'm not sure. I think my favorite thing now about this garden is because of the height, we can see it from indoors. And so we tend to open our front windows so we can see out a little bit more. And it's kind of funny when you start getting lovely things growing, how you want to be immersed in it and involved in it. And so it makes me really, really happy. The bees are all over the salvia. Look at this. Here we have, let me turn the camera up, the Asian wing beans, and they have been amazing. If you haven't seen any of the posts with them, actually I have some on this morning. This is like almost a little too big now, I'm learning. I used to think this was the perfect size. I want to get them when they are, kind of like with okra, I want to get them when they're about that size and not quite this thick. It has this string on it, which you can pull off, and you can still cook these. These are still very edible. They're just not very good raw, and I like them in my salad. So this size right here, oops, see, nice and soft, great in the salad. And I just learned this week, I've been doing taste tests. These new leaves are edible. I suppose the old leaves are edible too, they're just not as tasty. And we stir-fried some this week, and I used them in salads and loved them. Loved them. They were delicious. The fig tree is lovely. And I do think we're going to have some figs soon. I see one down through there that looks like it's almost ripe. Persimmons are growing along nicely. This is something else that's new this year, and I don't think it was big enough for me to show off to you last time. This is a Motherland Okra, or Motherland Okra, and it puts on, there's the pod. It puts on a very differently shaped pod. It tastes just like okra, it's just shaped differently. And I'm going to try this week. I understand that the small leaves on this are also tender and lovely to eat. So very excited to try these new things and use the garden. This is where the potatoes were, and I've allowed the Biden's alba to grow in. I might try to make a little bit of tea with this, and then when I cut it out, it's going to become a part of a fertilizer barrel. One more fig tree there, and this one is exploded. I would have to guess from side to side at the widest point, this thing might be 10 feet wide. And I do see some figs on there. Woohoo! How exciting. Now I'm going to just pivot to the left here. I'm sorry, your left, my right, maybe. And I will say this little section of the garden that I said wasn't doing very good. I had a helper here this week, and they might have thought that these little tiny plants here were weeds, because I haven't been over here to look. I had not weeds here, but okay. Well, they're gone now. But the things that I had here, the 2 squash that were here, were not doing well. But I did have sweet potato vines growing in here. And so it is what it is. We're just going to keep on growing. The beans have grown in really lovely here. The north side of the house, and this time of year it starts getting sun on this end, but earlier in the year this was all in the shade, and I was going to let it just rest. Well, this is me letting it rest. I have only planted tomatoes in here. Everything else you see is volunteers or / what other people would call weeds that have grown back. And so we have beans and we have spinach and we have some sweet potatoes that have grown in here. Along this bed though, I also know that the cats took advantage of it when it was barren and used a litter box. So I'm not eating anything that's in the soil here. So we're just going to let it flower and cover the ground and take care of things, and then we will cover it up, sanitize the soil, and try again next year. The stuff that's growing above ground though, I'm perfectly fine with eating, and especially because in the time that it's taken for this to grow up, the bacteria and things in the cat poo has dwindled. I've been doing quite a bit of research on this, and they say 120 days you should be fine. And so this was back during Christmas, but I'm not going to take a chance on the in-ground crops. Let's pivot back to the other side here. All of these that you see here, this carpet of beans, is all from beans that fell to the ground and are reseeding themselves, which makes me perfectly happy because it adds nutrition to the soil. Even if I didn't collect one bean from this, which I have been collecting them and we've been eating them and we've been sharing them, when I cut this back, it's going to leave nitrogen in the soil. Legumes and beans are nitrogen fixers. I won't go into a whole lecture about that today, but it's a great way for you to add fertility back to the soil. Actually, the vines that are coming through here are sweet potatoes I'd planted, and the vines that are over there are sweet potatoes that are volunteers. And the same thing with the sweet potato vines, those new tender leaves are edible, and so when I have enough of them growing, I'm going to come out and make another little attempt at eating them. I didn't like them when I cooked them, but I really liked them when my neighbor cooked them, so it could have been the chef. Imagine that. So this bed that I'm about to show you, I've kind of let grow wild, and I kind of like it. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm going to back up so I can show you everything that's growing on here. It's pretty nifty what's happened, and I'm doing some experiments and just testing some things. So this here, hopefully you guys can see my hand. Yep. This here is carrot that I'm letting go to seed. Look at these beautiful flowers that come up for carrots. The reason I am very interested in that and other types of umbrella style flowers is they attract what is known as a parasitic wasp. And what a parasitic wasp will do is lay its eggs into caterpillars and worms that it finds so that its children can have something to eat. And so planting beneficial plants for your pollinators and workers in the garden help you with the pest control. So I'm very, very excited to see that the carrots have finally gone to seed. I have been eating some carrots out of here, but I kept hoping they would go to seed. And so this is the first carrot, or maybe there's a couple of carrots here that have gone to seed. And it's just beautiful too. And so when I say go to seed, what I really mean is it makes a flower and then it makes its seed. And so when I talk about seeds, these flowers then turn into these little pods, which then fill in and become seed pods. And this is a cabbage I planted last winter that has reseeded. In fact, many of them reseeded, and I've already cut back And I'm letting those dry there so that I can have more cabbage seed to use in the garden. Now the other thing I'm pretty excited about seeing over here are my sunflowers. We can see we have some friends on that sunflower right there. When they're young, they will turn their face to the sun and look for that, so that's always kind of fun to see. Down here in the middle, in the in-betweens, I have cabbage that had self-seeded, and I have been eating off of this cabbage. And I did an experiment to see what happens when I pinch back the seed head, and now I have 3 seed heads here. If I'd been paying attention, I could have come and had some more leaves, and in fact, I might pinch those off again and get some more leaves to eat off of there. It makes great in a soup. When they're really small like that, they're delicious in a little stir fry. So I'm very happy to see those, but I didn't plant those either. This is another volunteer. Speaking of going to seed, I'm working on a video for this for YouTube. This is just a wild thistle or a wild lettuce, and it put up 1 seed head, 1 flower head, and I broke it off because I was trying to get the plant to grow in a little bit more. And when I did, I ended up getting like 13 new seed heads on. And so I cut those back, and I ended up getting over 90 seed heads growing on there. And since then, all these other seed heads have come back. And so it's just been a fun experiment to see nature wants to thrive. We just got to give it just enough of the right conditions to do that. That is our job. Woohoo! We are getting there, y'all. We are getting there. Let's see. Some folks ask me about these tanks that we have. These are IBC totes. We have them connected to our gutter, and we collect rainwater. I have sort of a sponge filter up the top to try to keep out some of the trash, a screen on the top of the container. I do have another YouTube video about how we put these together, and I'll be more than happy to put a link in the show description if anybody is interested. Now we're back in the shady part of the garden here. We have tomatillos that are finally really starting to come into their own. They sort of struggled here. Now, I started them in a tiny amount of dirt, and I think that maybe I did not give them everything they needed to get growing correctly. We've already dug the potatoes out of here, and I can see that I had a guest in here, probably a raccoon or an armadillo, digging around looking for something in the soil. That does not look like a cat visitor. My cucumbers are starting to come up, and now I'm going to come up with a plan to try to keep the pickle worm moth off of them. I'm going to start covering them at night, because the pickle worm moth, and I don't know the name of the moth, is a night moth. And so if I cover these at night, there's a much less chance that she'll be able to lay eggs on the plant and then have babies come out and eat my cucumbers and vines. It has been a kind of a crazy labor around here chasing those things down. I see the other cucumber is popping up underneath there. One phrase that I've been hearing for corn is knee-high by the 4th of July. Well, I think I'm there. The new batch is already more than knee-high, and I think some of the cats have been laying in here, or maybe because it's heavy, it's been falling over. So I've just sort of laid some logs down into the garden bed to sort of help hold the corn up and re-stabilize. This side is the corn that I've already harvested, and I haven't decided. I guess it's probably time to take it out, but I was just having some fun watching it grow on. Also in this bed I planted squash, and we have been harvesting these they called them winter melons, but it's some kind of a squash. They're a squash melon family. I've been harvesting those, and I have collected 4 or 5 of those, and we've been saving them because it's something that will store longer term, and by saving it, it gives me some food for later on. I don't have to eat it all right now. Now, speaking of eating it, I've had another guest here. I suspect grasshopper. I don't see them on right now, but they are munching down on my silks, and that is not good because I need the silks to pollinate the corn. So I may have to go through here and try to keep an eye and pull those guys out and and give them a gift in the creek. Now I can show you guys something else that's really cool. Avocados. Avocados, avocados, avocados. I think one of the last tours I forgot the avocado tree. And people were like, what happened to the avocados? We are starting to get some that we can eat. This is a variety that turns black or a dark purple before it's ripe. And you can see that some of these are beginning to turn. And we've eaten a few off of here, and they have been utterly delicious. This is a Mexicola variety, and we are really enjoying it, and it's done really, really well here. My helper that was here this week also did a great job getting this bed topped off. I've got the hoops and nets pulled off of it right this minute because I wanted to replant it, and I'm going to put sweet potatoes in this bed in between the other things that are still planted here. Now, speaking of pickle worms a second ago, this is the pruning that I needed to do for the pickle worms that have been attacking the cucumbers that are on this trellis. Last time we looked at this trellis, it was all beautiful and lovely and full of green, and it was majestic, and it looked like you think a garden should look. But in the reality, this is what a garden can look like sometimes, because I pruned this as well as I should, and so you get some waterborne problems where there's not enough airflow, and I couldn't cover this one because of the way it's shaped to keep the pickle moth off. I'll have to find out what the name of that is, but we call the worms the pickle worms, and they're probably not even worms. They're some kind of caterpillar. And I can see here, I know this is fresh because I came through and cleaned this yesterday. Right here, this is frass maybe, or where they, oh yeah, there it is. It's the frass from where they've eaten into this. They're still there, so they are burrowing their way into this cucumber. I am going to pull this off, and I don't normally do this on the live, but we're going to take a detour. We'll set the camera down. There's a little pickle worm right there. So we're going to go give a gift to the lizards. I have a little tray up here where I feed them now. Probably see them a little bit better there. They live in my little bed here that is waiting to be replanted. I don't know if you can see, right there is one little lizard head sticking out. And they will, if I back up, sometimes they'll come down while I'm here. Sometimes they don't. Oh, we got some action. I have been, for the last few days, every time I find a pickle worm, I have been bringing them and putting them on that little blue lid for the lizards. And usually, within a minute or so, they come down and have a snack. And so it's kind of like Wild Kingdom over here. Oh, here we go. Maybe I'm backed up enough that they'll come on down. Lizard is there. Caterpillar is there. Worm is there. Pickle worm. Of course, they're not going to show off for me this morning. Oh, wait, here we go. Or maybe I spoke too soon. Oh, done. Thank you for your service, kind lizard. Okay, let's go back to the garden tour. But that is my new solution for the pickle worms. I am not putting pesticides out. I'm trying not to put pesticides out. I'm going to work with covering them and monitoring, and then feeding the ones I find to the lizards to encourage them to stick around. Seems like a good plan, don't you think? We have enough toxins on this earth, and look, let me be clear. I'm not saying I never have used pesticides or will never ever again use pesticides, because I think there is nothing absolute in life. But I want to do my part. And so I don't have to do everything perfectly, because because I have a great coach who reminds me, progress, not perfection. I don't have to do everything perfectly. I've just got to do more things right and continue to improve and help things thrive, including myself. Even with as much as I've cut out, in the afternoons, this is lovely and shady under here, and it makes me very happy. I like to come out here and stand and just look up. It makes it easy to look for pickle worms. I've got to get out here and clean this mess up where I did the pruning yesterday. Now, the second bed here is kind of cray-cray. It has done a little better, and I believe there are a couple of reasons for that. One, I think it's because it gets more shade. It still gets plenty of sun, but it gets more shade in the hottest part of the afternoon. And because it gets more shade, it's grown taller, which then has given shade to the other plants in here. And so we've got lettuce, peppers of all varieties. We've got Thai eggplant in here. We even have a little guardian up there. You would think, well, it's got a net on it. How did a lizard get in there? Oh, they can still get in. I don't have it super tight. Look at there. Hello, guardian. Though I do see some more of what I now know are squash bugs in here. But what's interesting is there's all these squash bugs, but I don't have any squash in this bed. And they are doing a tiny bit of damage to my, at least I think they're squash bugs. Maybe I'm wrong. If somebody knows differently, then feel free to tell me. Let's see if I can get a good angle here on this one. Right there. So I do knock them off. I do shoot them off with the water, and when I see them, I do pluck them out of here. But I haven't had a whole lot of damage in here. And so I don't know if they're just storing up for winter and they're going to do damage somewhere else, but so far so good. Tomatillos have done really, really well here. We've made salsa a few times. And I haven't produced the video yet, but you guys may have heard me talk about in another video wanting to get my landscape fabric down under the edges of the bed so that we could prevent weeds from coming up around the bottom. Now, I don't know if this was blooming the last time we were in the garden, but it turns out there is hummingbird vine here. And I don't know if I planted it or it's just naturally occurring here, because I thought I planted wisteria here. And the hummingbirds are loving it. And we were able to add our beautiful hummingbird feeder over here as well. And so this is a tree that was taken down. The top was taken out of it. And I asked the arborist, the tree guy, to please leave the rest of the tree. And it is just blossoming with branches. I know eventually it'll need to come out. But meantime, lizards live in here. Birds feed in here. Hummingbirds come and feed on the vine that's grown up here. And so it's a little micro neighborhood. Ah, I see a culprit over here. I'm going to see if I can catch this fella. And I did. So this is an eastern lubber, and is very likely what has been doing the damage around here on some of the plants. I found them eating my spider lilies, and I am going to go see if the bass would like some lunch. Give me just a second. And if nothing else, we'll get relocated. Oh, I didn't get it on camera, did I? That was very fast. That was very fast. So, what the lizards can't help me with, the fish do. Sorry, y'all missed that. So, we don't get a view back in the back of the meadow very much. This is sort of a gone wild area. There's some elderberry and stuff that grow here naturally. I tried to keep the edges along the top of the creek a little bit taller so that holds the creek in when we have rainstorms. We do have some invasive air potato here that is not edible, and there's not much I can do about it. In fact, even the yellow flowers here that look so pretty are an invasive flower. And so I'm going to continue working on planting more natives in order to combat having the invasives that are here. But apparently cutting these back does nothing but encourage them. And so I don't know what else I might do. And they grow right across the top of the mulch. They do not care. And how they got here is they're sold in garden stores as lovely ground cover, except they choke out the native ground cover. And so if you see these, they're ox eyes in the garden store, don't buy those. Look for natives. All right, now we're back on Orchard Row and some of the other native plantings we have here. We have the spider lily over there. I've got my citrus plants in here. They're looking pretty good. I didn't water them as much without the rain, and so they're looking better now. We got them watered back up and topped off. This is all going to get trimmed out because I have a whole bunch of new plants to go in here. Now you've seen the plants before because they've been here for a while. This is an elderberry, by the way. They blew over here. You saw the plants because I had them come in from the native nursery, but now we have a place for them in the garden. And so we got some other cleanup done. My helper did a great job this week. Really, really happy with the work that he did around here. And so talk about resilience. These plants were put here on Thursday, and sometimes Friday they blew over. And in that time, they've gone from laying flat to standing themselves back up, even though the pots are laying down. Isn't that hilarious? But they're going to get planted in this native row over here on that side. Hey, Moose. Hey, Moose, how you doing? What's going on? The other thing I was really happy about was he did a great job getting all my firewood back into the firewood zone. And so now my kindling and stuff is all back here, and I'll be all set for our fall fireside chats with the solo stove. This is a beautyberry, another native, and I've planted it for the birds. And the elderberry also seems to be a favorite of the birds, which is great because the more of the natural stuff they eat, the less of my garden they eat. All right, let's keep on going here. Look, I gotta watch where I walk here. It's still nice and shady back here though. It makes me very happy to be back here. If you've been staying tuned, you know that I got the greenhouse down. But you may not know that I got all the garden beds down too. And so this is where the greenhouse was. And the grass is already taken back over and it's doing a great job. The passion fruit is doing really, really well here. It gets plenty of sun during the day. We've got support with this trellis. A lot of people always come back and ask me, what is this trellis? Because they haven't seen the other video. But we literally laid 2 cattle panels together, zip tied them. And now we put the passion fruit, passion flower vines into grow bags so that they would have plenty of soil around them. We want to do something different eventually, but for now this gave us a way to let them grow on and give them something to grow on. And the Cattley Guava, we let it get turned over and it got really, really heavy, and it looks like some of these branches may have taken some damage, but I still have a bunch of fruit on here, and I saw some yesterday that looked like it's beginning to turn yellow, which is what I want to see for eating it. So that part will be very, very yummy. And then after the season, I am going to prune this back and try to help it get a little more bushy so it doesn't fall over. We actually have had to stake it up and pull it back, so I'm leveraging some polystring and some hooks to sort of pull it up and get it back up off the ground. And we're almost full circle here except for the patio, and this is the cucumbers, except, and I don't know if I shared that with you guys last time, except that I also planted in here one North Georgia candy roaster. And there's one plant right back there, but you got to see this. Let me back up. I pulled one vine down on purpose just to see how far it's going to grow. So 10 days ago, well, almost 2 weeks ago now, this vine was not touching the ground. It was just hanging off. So basically it's growing about 8 or 9 inches a day here. And I have been eating the squash blossoms. I've had them raw in a salad. I've had them stir-fried with some other things, and they taste like squash. It's just kind of fun to have some more color in the dish. I have done a very bad job pruning and cleaning this up, and so here's another project for me, is to get out here and get some of these vines pruned back and clean up some of the leaves so that there can be some airflow through here. And we have, and it's covered up right this minute, I have 1 of 2 new grow bags that are going in here. That is going to be yams. I've got it covered right this minute to keep the cats from using it as a giant litter box, but it's a 100-gallon grow bag. I've decided that I'm going to just put fabric in this end of the garden instead of fighting with weeds all the time. But this is a low part in the garden. Water will come in here just fine. It will help from the bottom. I'll water from the top, and we're going to fill that up with yams. And then a second bed is going to be sweet potatoes. And we are back to the bananas. So let's head on to the porch and see what's growing on in our green stalks and on the patio. This is Greenstalk number 1. I am currently growing basil, mini bell pepper, and Thai eggplant in here. I see another volunteer of some kind up there, aka plant that wasn't wanted. But it's okay. When you leave soil open, things will grow, and so you just have to deal with that. I did cut these back recently, and I'm working on another video on propagating basil. This is all Thai basil. The top row is basil that we got from going out to eat at a pho restaurant, and I've been propagating that, and I've started some in the other bed as well, because Mom told me not to put the pho basil in with any other basil, and so I'd already done that. Meantime, we still have some sweet Thai basil here. We're using the basil that we have, even though it is not the favorite flavor, and I'm going to continue propagating more of this, and I'm ordering some seeds, and I'm going to have a basil taste test. We're going to figure out what kind of basil we want to grow for cooking Thai food. In here are some orange hat tomatoes growing on, and I took a piece of basil and just stabbed it down in there, and it's taken over the pot, but that's okay because it is giving a little shade to these tiny little plants right now. If you are growing tomatoes in Florida right now, it is hot here, and then there are other places that it's hot too, but I can speak specifically to Northeast Florida because I know what the conditions are like because that's where I am. And once it reaches a certain temperature, I think it's somewhere in the high 80s, tomatoes stop putting on flowers. They stop trying to fruit. And that doesn't mean you need to throw them away. In fact, just take care of them, continue to nurture them, continue to give them water and all the things they need. Because when the temperatures drop again later in the fall, in the early winter, you might get a few more batches of tomatoes if you're growing small tomatoes. So I like to grow a lot of small varieties. So the little cherry tomatoes, grape tomatoes, in this case it's a micro tomato, it's an orange hat tomato from Baker Creek, they will come back. And in fact, these plants are from seed from my other Baker Creek plant that I had in the same pot, and most of them were volunteers. And I have a lot of different videos because you're always looking for more content for your YouTube channel. And in fact, I had so many little seedlings pop up from volunteers and shoving dead old tomatoes back in. I have a whole tray here of orange hat tomatoes that are ready for the next phase of life. I put them in here to start and get some roots on them. Now it's time to get some worm castings and other nutrition things here so they can start growing up. And I'm going to take care of them and hopefully come winter have a lot more tomatoes through the winter. Now back to the rest of this patio tour here. The Shishito Peppers just continue to produce. I have not done a very good job eating as many as we can produce or doing something with them. I have to learn some more ways to use them in cooking, because they are definitely, with 2 plants, growing way more than we can eat and give away. Not complaining about that. I'm just going to learn other ways to cook them and eat them. Here we have a Cattley Guava. Kim, you guessed correctly yesterday, a picture of a dragon fruit. Here is one more of them now, and they have really done well. We gave them a little bit of fertilizer. Like I said, sometimes we use chemicals. We're going to continue to learn to make our own types of fertilizers and inputs. The rosemary, however, I have not done a very good job with, and so apparently it's really hard to kill rosemary unless you're me. And so it was doing really good kind of back in the shade and nobody bothering it, but it got put out here because I moved the greenhouse, and it gets all this full sun, and it's not very happy with it. Little crown of thorns back here makes it kind of pretty. Another crown of thorns. Dragon's tail. Oh, how appropriate with 2 little baby dragons. You see those guys on there? More guardians, more guardians. Another shishito. And here is the dragon fruit that was featured yesterday on the page. It was just so beautiful. The rain had rained the night before, and the water was just clinging to the plant, and the sun was coming up, and so it was just lovely. It's doing great. And then to wrap up the garden portion, here is garden stalk or Greenstalk number 2. This has been great on the patio. I've got lettuce here. I can come out and make a salad still this time of year. I will say, while it's still growing and it's just starting to bolt, it is starting to lose its taste a little bit. It's a little stronger, but I am just sucking it up, princess. So Daikon Radish is going to seed now. That's these pretty purple flowers. Some of the bok choy I had in here has gone to seed instead of giving me any kind of a plant, but that's okay. And then I have some cilantro up here. I can't believe I actually still have a little bit of cilantro. It has been so hot, and cilantro does not like that. And a few onions. I skipped over them. I skipped over the table unintentionally out there. But from the vivipary tomatoes that were growing out on the patio, I have transplanted clippings, and I have, it looks like one of them may have bit the dust, but I have so far 5 new tomato plants starting, and I'm also starting something new here in the garden. That in the back is betel, which is a nice edible, and this will be loquat, which will be some more fruit trees. So I like being able to show off some of these new things that we're trying, and I'm sure at some point I'll make a video about how the betel is growing along as well. How about that? Let's get settled back down on the porch here for just a second. I could use a sip of water. How about y'all? Whew. If you have any questions about the plants that you've seen or the way I'm growing things here in my Northeast Florida suburban garden, you're more than welcome to put those in the comments. I really enjoy engaging. If you have tips for me, I welcome those as well, because I've only been gardening here on a regular basis for about 3 years. So I think of myself as a fairly new gardener. Until next time, my friends, please remember to wear your sunscreen, drink plenty of water, and have a fantastic day. Thank you for watching.